a generous widow, a deadly secret, and one dangerous tip. Welcome to Marple Mysteries. I'm your host, Harrington. Tell me your city. I value your voices. Wolfe begins to dig. It started with a knock that had the rhythm of someone not quite sure whether they belonged. That alone was enough to make me raise an eyebrow. People who come to the brownstone either knock like they own the place or like they're begging to. This one was somewhere in between. Fritz looked at me from the hall with a look that said, "You're closer." He was right, so I set down my glass of milk. Yes, milk. It was before lunch, and Wolfe doesn't allow whiskey before noon, and went to the door. The woman standing there was the kind of widow you could spot before she said a word. Not black veil and trembling lips, but the calm, contained sort who'd folded her grief neatly and put it on a shelf. She was in her 40s, maybe, with a posture that had practiced dignity and eyes that had forgotten how to rest. She held her purse like it was both her shield and her confession. "Mr. Goodwin," she asked. "That depends who's asking. If it's the electric company, I'm Nero Wolfe." That got me half a smile. Not much, but more than I expected. "I'm Mrs. Darnell. I was told you, or your employer, handle delicate matters." That was a phrase people liked to use when they weren't sure if what they wanted was legal, moral, or either. I stepped aside. "Come in. He's upstairs murdering orchids, but we can disturb him if your delicate matter passes inspection." She followed me into the office. Her perfume was faint, expensive, and anxious. While she perched on the edge of the red leather chair like she expected it to bite, I hit the intercom. "Client, possibly delicate," I said. From the speaker came the familiar growl. "You may present her in 20 minutes. She looks like she's been counting minutes since Tuesday. Then she can count 20 more. I'm occupied." I clicked off and turned back. 20 minutes. He's not snubbing you personally. He snubs everyone equally." She didn't smile this time. She was watching the bookshelves like they were part of an exam. "I was told Mr. Wolfe doesn't leave this house." "That's correct. He relies on me for the heavy lifting, like opening doors and tying shoes." "What's the nature of your trouble, Mrs. Darnell?" She hesitated, then took a folded envelope from her purse. The seal was broken. Inside was a single check, cancelled, stamped, and torn neatly in two. "This check was written by my late husband," she said. "Payable to a man named Victor Lamson, the day before he died." "Your husband died recently?" 2 months ago. A heart attack, they said. But that check wasn't for business, and Victor Lamson wasn't a friend." I nodded. "So you think Mr. Lamson might have been squeezing him?" Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, assessing. "I think my husband was being blackmailed, and I think Mr. Lamson wasn't the only one who knew." That kind of line usually leads to trouble. The kind that crawls under your rug and stays for dinner. Why come to us now? Because yesterday, someone broke into my apartment. They didn't take jewelry. They took a small box of letters my husband had kept locked away. Personal letters. She drew a breath, slow and deliberate. "And last night I received this." She handed me another envelope. Inside was a single slip of paper. "Silence has its price again." I didn't have to fake the low whistle. When I went back to the intercom, Wolfe hadn't moved an inch upstairs, but his voice had that tone he saves for orchid misbehavior and police intrusion. "Archie?" "Yes, sir?" "You will bring her up now. It seems 20 minutes will not improve her story." That was how the widow came to upset the sanctity of the brownstone, by handing us a blackmail note that smelled faintly of violets and old secrets. And though Wolfe would later claim he took the case for the preservation of domestic order, I could tell even then that something about Mrs. Darnell's calm, too calm, had Corfritz conducted her up with the ceremony of a maitre d' escorting a duchess. I took the stairs behind them, because Wolfe allows only one kind of rush in the brownstone, and it involves heavy cream. Wolfe was where a sensible man would expect him, enthroned behind the desk, his bulk asserting sovereignty over leather and wood. The chair looked resigned to its fate. He didn't get up. He never does. He let his eyes travel once, shoes to forehead, and came to a stop on the envelope I was holding. "Mrs. Darnell," I said. "Nero Wolfe." She didn't curtsy. I'll give her that. She inclined her head and sat when he flicked a hand at the client chair. Her self-possession would have impressed a judge. Wolfe studied the check and the note without touching them. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "a slip sheet." I slid a clean blotter across the desk. With 2 fingertips he arranged the artifacts as though placing chessmen. "Your husband's name?" "Charles Edwin Darnell." "Occupation?" "He co-founded a boutique investment firm, Darnell and Merritt." She said it without pride. "He also served on the board of the Halcyon Literacy Fund." Wolfe's eyes closed, which for him is not a nap, but a sorting of drawers. "Your conjecture is blackmail. On what basis?" She was ready. "The check to Lamson, the letters taken last night, and something Charles said 3 months ago. He told me there are mistakes a man pays for twice." "You assumed a mistake involving Mr. Lamson." "I never heard the name until I found the stub," she said evenly. "But Charles would not pay a stranger $5,000 for services." I jotted the number. 5,000 is enough money to make a man moral or immoral, depending on his mood. "Tell us about Lamson." "Victor Lamson runs what he calls a discreet consultancy. He knows everyone who wants to be known and everything they don't want said. He and Charles crossed paths at Halcyon events." "Socially?" Wolfe opened his eyes. "And who, besides you, knew of those letters?" "No one," she said, then stopped herself. "Unless Elaine knew. She ran Charles's home files before we married, years ago, and later became his office manager." "Surname?" "Mercer." "Mrs. Mercer or Miss?" "Miss." Wolfe's lips compressed. "If you think he disapproves of single women in offices, you don't know him. He disapproves of nouns without their proper modifiers." "Others who might have an interest." "Julian Merritt, Charles's partner. He didn't get along with me. He said I was a distraction." She said it without heat. "And Mr. Lamson, of course. Also, Theo." "Who is Theo?" Wolfe rumbled. "And why the ellipsis?" "My stepson. He's 26, brilliant, and angry with everyone on general principle," she said, and for the first time the veneer cracked a millimeter. "He thinks Charles betrayed my first husband's memory by marrying me, which is untidy, because my first husband was his father. It's a modern world. Families are built like scaffolds." I kept the pencil moving. "And the Halcyon Fund? Any enemies with bookish fangs?" "Lydia Frome, the executive director. She's formidable. She always had an angle." The pause wasn't coy. It was searching for a polite word. "She admired Charles. When he stepped back from the board this spring, she was unhappy." "Why did he step back?" I asked. "His blood pressure. And because he said the fund had become more society than service." Those were his words. Wolfe made a low sound. "The letters. Describe them." "They were bound with green ribbon. Old paper. From the early 90s. Before Theo was born." Her eyes met mine. "They were not love letters, Mr. Goodwin. I read 2 when I discovered the box years ago. They were negotiations. Names, sums, promises to conceal embarrassing transactions for donors and clients. Charles said they were remnants of another era. He kept them as a reminder." "Reminders," Wolfe said, "are rarely left in locked boxes unless one intends them to be found." The widow sat straighter. "He wasn't a cruel man." "I did not say he was." Wolfe's tone softened half a degree. "When precisely did you discover the burglary?" "Yesterday at 5. A decorative drawer was ajar. The lockbox was gone from the safe. Nothing else touched. Police? No, I was afraid if the letters resurfaced, the damage would be worse. And yet you come here. Because someone now believes they can charge me again, she said, indicating the note. And because... She stopped. Because? Wolfe prodded without lifting his voice. Because you don't leave this house, she said, and the people in my world value that. They will come to you to be seen, not coming. You can say many things about a woman who plays chess in her head while she grieves. You cannot say she is dull. Wolfe's mouth twitched, which is like a parade from him. Archie. Yes, sir. You will telephone Mr. Victor Lamson and request his attendance at 3 o'clock. You will also invite Mr. Julian Merritt and Miss Elaine Mercer at 4. He turned to Mrs. Darnell. You will call your stepson and Miss Frome. Inform them that Mr. Wolfe requires 15 minutes of their time after 4:30. She blinked. All of them, today? Today, Wolfe said, is the only day. Tomorrow is for digestion. If I may, I put in, Lamson may not be the cooperative type. He bills for oxygen. Offer him $200 for inconvenience, Wolfe said. If he declines, raise it until he accepts. There is no economy in cheap bait. Mrs. Darnell rose. They'll come, even Victor. Before you descend, Wolfe said, 2 admonitions. First, you will not mention the letters to anyone. Second, if you receive any communication, however trivial, you will forward it to Mr. Goodwin immediately. You understand? She did. She left with Fritz. When the door had clicked, Wolfe shut his eyes again. You're not taking this for the money, I said. It wasn't a question. No. He inhaled, the scent of orchids ghosting his expression. There is a corrosion here. Blackmail is a commerce in silence. It dissolves the glue that holds institutions together. Also, his eyes opened and pinned me. Mrs. Darnell lied to us once. Oh? I perched. Where? She said no one knew of the letters, then admitted Miss Mercer might. That is not a contradiction of knowledge, but of candor. She is holding something in reserve. She doesn't strike me as the hold-in-reserve type. Wolfe grunted. You're impressed by equanimity. I'm impressed by precision. I got Lamson's number from a pocket card index that looked like it had been maintained by a librarian with a sense of humor. Mine. Lamson answered on the 3rd ring with a voice of silk dipped in vinegar. This is Goodwin, Nero Wolfe's office, I said. 3 o'clock today. Consultation. Busy, he said. I'm polishing my reputation. Bring it along, I told him. 200 for inconvenience. 4, he said. 3, I said. He considered the difference between his dignity and $100. $3.50, and I'll sit if I please. You'll sit if he pleases, I said, and hung up. Julian Merritt took longer. His assistant guarded him like a dragon hoarding calendar slots. I was the knight with the telephone lance, so I jabbed with phrases like Nero Wolfe and urgent, and the kind of trouble that's contagious. We secured 4. Elaine Mercer didn't hesitate. Of course, she said, crisp and efficient. I've long wanted to meet Mr. Wolfe. 4 o'clock suits. Theo Darnell answered with a yawn you could hear. If this is about the funeral fund, keep it. When I steered him back to the brownstone, he snorted. I know Wolfe. He solves rich people's problems by making them feel guilty. I'll come and feel guilty. Lydia Frome's voice carried the poise of a grant application that always gets funded. 4:30, she said. Mr. Wolfe has the reputation of a man who dislikes people as much as I do. We may get on. By the time I hung up, the office had shifted its weight. The air feels different when other people are on the way, like a cello string tuned a quarter turn too tight. Wolfe's eyelids rose the way a stage curtain does when it knows the play's worth watching. Your impression of Mrs. Darnell? He asked. Composed, loyal, and not above editing facts to protect a dead man's legend, I said. Also, she chose us because her circle will appreciate a discreet arena. If you wanted your sanctum disturbed, you selected the right bait. I did not select her, he said mildly. She knocked. Sure, I said, and a trout leaps. He glanced toward the kitchen. Fritz will move luncheon forward. Guests must not intersect with trout, Amandine. He paused. Archie, when Mr. Lamson arrives, you will seat him where the afternoon glare strikes his eyes. I want to observe his patience. And if he wears sunglasses, then he will remove them, or I will remove him. That was settled. The brownstone braced itself, polite on the surface, coiled underneath. At 2:55, the bell rang with the confidence of a man who believed he was about to charge us for breathing. Victor Lamson stepped in, wearing a suit that looked like it had been cut by a tailor who billed by the syllable. Goodwin, he said, brushing the air. Where's the bear? In his den, I said, leading him toward the office. Keep your hands out of the honey. He smiled for practice. When he crossed the threshold and saw Wolfe, the smile adjusted itself to something useful. Wolfe did not move. He didn't have to. He owned the room and the breath inside it. Mr. Lamson, he said, you collect debts of discretion. Today you will help us calculate one. Get the attention of the man who hates disruption almost as much as he loves orchids. Lamson eased himself into the red leather chair like a man auditioning for the role of Unflappable. His suit gleamed faintly. So did his eyes. He placed a card on the edge of Wolfe's desk. Victor Lamson, Discreet Consultancy. It read in polite type, as if discreet were a title bestowed by the state. Wolfe didn't touch it. You knew Charles Darnell, he said. I knew of him, Lamson replied smoothly. Prominent investor, clean reputation, occasional donor. We intersected at charity events. A nodding acquaintance. Your acquaintance was intimate enough to warrant a payment of $5,000 from him the day before his death. Lamson's brows flicked. Was it? Then my accountant is more efficient than I thought. I sat near the wall, pad ready, pretending I wasn't there. Wolfe's tone was unhurried but had the density of a falling stone. Mr. Lamson, you sell information. Who bought Mr. Darnell's? Lamson smiled, showing small, well-kept teeth. I sell discretion, not information. Sometimes one buys the other. Your answer, Wolfe said, is the kind of evasion used by people who believe charm is currency. The man's composure wavered half a degree. I have no idea why you're asking me. If Mr. Darnell paid me, it was for consultation, perhaps advice about a sensitive investment. Wolfe's lids lowered. You will describe the nature of that advice. Lamson considered. The living are not bound by the confidences of the dead, but the ethical find it inconvenient to betray them. I am, regrettably, ethical. That got my pen tapping. He'd rehearsed that line. Wolfe sighed faintly, a sound that usually precedes a slow tightening of screws. Mr. Lamson, your ethics are a matter of definition. You will either disclose the subject of your transaction, or you will have me construe it in my own fashion. In that case, I will be obliged to assume it was extortion. You may then take the burden of disproving it. Lamson's shoulders shifted. He looked at me, then at the ceiling. All right. Darnell wanted to bury a story, an old one, something about the early years of the Halcyon Fund, improper donor arrangements, misused grants, the usual blend of philanthropy and appetite. He was worried that material might reappear. I offered to help see that it didn't. And your help consisted of what? Paying off someone less scrupulous than myself. Who? I didn't ask for a name, he said, smiling again. That's what makes me discreet. Wolfe's eyes opened fully, heavy-lidded and exact. You accepted payment without knowing to whom it was destined. That is stupidity, not discretion. Mr. Lamson, you're either a fool or an accomplice. Which? The man's jaw set. You'll pardon me if I don't dignify that with, "You are dismissed," Wolfe said, turning an invisible page in the air. "Archie will show you out." Lamson opened his mouth, then closed it again. He stood, smoothed his tie, and left with a stiffness that could have been dignity or rigor mortis. When the front door closed, I came back in. "You bounced him fast." "An empty bag cannot be filled," Wolfe murmured. "He told us what he wished us to believe. That is useful. It confirms there was indeed matter to conceal, and that someone else profits by its resurrection. Also that Lamson's playing middleman for somebody still in the game. Precisely. He will talk again, later, under pressure of self-interest." Wolfe leaned back. "Who is next?" "Julian Merritt and Miss Mercer. They'll arrive together," he insisted. "Convenient. They will contradict one another more efficiently." At 4 on the dot they did. Merritt was tall, bony, and packed with the kind of confidence that comes from years of watching other people earn his money. Elaine Mercer was his inverse, compact, efficient, and ready to be done with everyone. They entered like colleagues forced into a 3-legged race. "Mr. Wolfe," Merritt began before sitting, "I'm here because Mrs. Darnell implied there's a matter concerning the firm. If this is about her late husband's finances, it is about his judgment," Wolfe said. "Sit." They sat. She crossed her legs neatly. He crossed his arms instead. "Mr. Merritt," Wolfe continued, "your partner made a payment to Victor Lamson before his death. You will tell me whether that transaction affected Darnell and Merritt." Merritt frowned. "We don't engage Lamson. He's a gossip merchant. Charles would never—" "He did. Then he was an idiot," Merritt snapped. "Pardon the candor, but it's true. He was under stress, personal, professional. Since marrying that woman, he lost objectivity. Theo resented it, clients noticed, and Lydia Frome at Halcyon turned the screws. I tried to steady him." Elaine Mercer's voice was cool. "You also tried to edge him out. I handled Charles's correspondence. You circulated a draft separation agreement 3 weeks before he died." "That was precautionary," he said sharply. "He'd become erratic." "Erratic enough," Wolfe said, "to pay off a blackmailer." They both froze. The air in the room folded in on itself. Merritt's mouth worked. "If you're implying—" "I imply nothing. I infer." Wolfe turned his gaze to the secretary. "Miss Mercer, what did you know of the letters taken from Mrs. Darnell's apartment?" Her eyes flickered once. "Only that they existed. He told me he'd kept them too long. They predated his partnership with Mr. Merritt." "But you read them?" "No," she said too quickly. "I didn't. Yet you knew they were negotiations of a financial nature. That knowledge came from somewhere." She hesitated. "From him. He described them once. Vaguely." "Indeed." Wolfe closed his eyes as though filing that sound. "You will both remain available this evening. I may have further questions." Merritt bristled. "We have obligations." "Cancel them," Wolfe said, not opening his eyes. "You are already involved in a greater one." They left, the door closing like a verdict. I waited until the footsteps faded. "So far," I said. We've got a widow, a fixer, a partner, and a secretary, all circling the same corpse and the same box of letters. Any of them could have lifted it." "Not quite," Wolfe said. "A burglary executed without theft of valuables suggests intent beyond money. Someone wanted silence, not profit. Or both. You still think Darnell was blackmailed?" "I think he was leveraged," Wolfe said. "By whom remains? But Mrs. Darnell's omission is telling. She neglected to mention that the Halcyon Fund's executive director, Lydia Frome, has access to donor records identical to those described in the letters. If she learned of their existence, she might regard them as weapons." which makes her our next guest, and Theo. A boy who resents inheritance is less dangerous than a woman who guards it. Nonetheless, he may provide the emotional texture others conceal. You will manage them both. At the same time? Consecutively. Theo first, Miss Frome after. The order matters. I nodded. The brownstone was turning into a carousel of motives. Wolfe remained motionless, eyes half shut, his voice low. Archie, note this. Every person connected to Darnell used the same word. Stress. It is a word that conceals cause. Find what provoked it. By supper? Preferably before, he said, and reached for his beer. I left him with his orchids of the criminal kind, and went to prepare for the next act. The bell would ring again soon, and the sanctity of the brownstone would take another small bruise on its perfect, polished surface. Theo Darnell arrived 10 minutes late, which was early for his kind. He came in wearing a jacket that cost less than his haircut and an expression that could curdle milk. I could have told him to wipe his feet, but the tone of his entrance suggested he wouldn't have bothered even if I'd said please. He gave me a look that said I'm here because I'm curious, not because I care, and let me escort him to the office. Wolfe didn't rise, naturally. He never rises, not even for the national anthem. This is Nero Wolfe, I said, and this is the part where you don't sit until he says so. Theo dropped into the chair anyway. He can bill me for disobedience. Wolfe opened one eye. Young man, insolence is not individuality, it is merely undigested resentment. Theo laughed once, sharp and brief. That's one way to start. What's this about? My stepmother thinks someone stole love letters. She thinks, Wolfe said, that her husband's private correspondence has been removed for purposes of coercion. You're not here to mock her, but to assist me. Theo leaned back, crossing one ankle over a knee. Assist how? By explaining that my father, Charles, had a habit of collecting secrets the way other men collect wines. He liked to keep leverage handy. Maybe it's poetic that someone used it on him in the end. You imply he was blackmailed? Wolfe asked. I don't imply. I know. He glanced at me, then back. I saw Lamson's name on one of my father's checks 2 months before he died. I asked about it. He said it was a charitable consultation. And you believed him? I wasn't 12, Theo said. I knew Lamson was a parasite. Everyone in my father's circle did. But Dad thought he could manage people like that. He always believed in control. Control, Wolfe murmured. A trait that suggests fear. Theo smirked. Or vanity. I said, you think Lamson had something on him? Theo's eyes hardened. If he didn't, someone else did. Dad was tangled in the Halcyon Fund's mess years ago. They funneled donations to certain clients who weren't exactly needy. He helped cover it. That box of letters my stepmother mentioned probably had the receipts, names, dates, deals. And Mrs. Darnell knew this? Wolfe asked. Theo shrugged. She knew enough to keep the box locked and pretend not to care. She's good at selective ignorance. You can quote me. I jotted that down. You sound fond. I'm practical, Theo said. She married Dad for his name. He married her for peace and got ulcers instead. I stayed out of it, but now... He hesitated, eyes narrowing. You think someone killed him, don't you? You think this wasn't just a heart attack? Wolfe opened his eyes fully, studying the young man as if measuring the weight of each word before dropping it into the balance. I think a man blackmailed to silence may choose despair over exposure. Whether his death was natural or assisted is irrelevant until I know who profited from it. Theo nodded once, almost approvingly. That's fair. Then you should talk to Lydia Frome. She hated losing him from the board. He had influence, and she had plans. She runs Halcyon like a private court, and she and Lamson, let's just say they've exchanged more favors than letters. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. You assert that Miss Frome and Mr. Lamson cooperated in manipulating donors. Theo smiled thinly. Call it a professional understanding. She trades moral authority for money. He trades money for silence. My father was caught in between. I said, "You have proof of that, or are you selling us the family folklore version?" "I'm giving you the version I lived," Theo snapped. "You want proof? Ask Lydia, or Lamson, or Merritt. They're all tied together by greed and reputation." He stood abruptly. "If this helps you hang one of them, good. But don't expect me to mourn." "Mr. Darnell," Wolfe said, calm as ever. "One last question. Who benefits most from the disappearance of those letters?" Theo looked straight at him. "Everyone but me. My father's secrets kept them all on leashes. Now the collars are gone." When he was gone, the air seemed to reset, like the room exhaled. Wolfe closed his eyes and rubbed the bridge of his nose with one finger, a motion I'd learned to interpret as mental digestion. "Well," I said, "he's a bouquet, resentment, arrogance, and a top note of grief. But he gave us something. Lydia Frome and Lamson might have been in business together." "Yes," Wolfe said softly. "It was already implicit in Lamson's refusal to name his intermediary. Miss Frome may be that party." He rang for Fritz and ordered beer. When it arrived, Wolfe took a measured sip before continuing. "Observe, Archie. Each witness provides the same structure but rearranges the emphasis. Mrs. Darnell gave us sentiment, Lamson, deniability, Merritt, self-preservation, Miss Mercer, omission, Theo, accusation. They converge upon Miss Frome." "Which means she's next," I said. "Indeed." She arrived 20 minutes later, punctuality disguised as leisure. Lydia Frome was a woman in her 50s with immaculate posture and a voice like cooled steel. She carried the authority of someone who'd chaired too many committees. "Mr. Wolfe," she said as I ushered her in, "I'm curious what could justify interrupting a board meeting and invoking Charles Darnell's name." "You may satisfy that curiosity by sitting," Wolfe said. She did, gracefully. "You have questions, I assume." "Everyone does these days. Poor Charles. His death has become a cottage industry of speculation." Wolfe inclined his head. "I prefer structure to speculation. Tell me, Miss Frome, what was your last contact with Mr. Darnell?" 2 days before his death. He telephoned about an audit inquiry. Routine. He was worried about optics. I told him to relax. The fund's affairs were perfectly in order." "Were they?" "Of course," she said smoothly. "The Halcyon Fund's records would withstand any examination." Yet he resigned from the board soon after. "That was his decision, not mine." "He cited moral discomfort," Wolfe said. "You called it optics. Which term is truer?" For the first time she paused. Mr. Darnell was prone to melodrama in his later years. He disliked certain donors' expectations. "Expectations involving personal compensation." She smiled faintly. "You're blunt." "I'm sedentary, Miss Frome. I conserve motion for necessity. So, you and Mr. Lamson, describe the nature of your acquaintance." Her lips compressed. "Purely professional. He consults occasionally for the fund on reputation matters. We live in an age where good deeds require good press." "Indeed," Wolfe said. "Did you ask him to suppress information about the fund's early irregularities?" "I have no idea what you're implying." "Then allow me to clarify," Wolfe said, leaning slightly forward. "I imply that you used Mr. Lamson to retrieve or destroy compromising material once held by Charles Darnell, material he safeguarded for reasons of conscience. That material has now vanished. You will tell me where it is." Her composure faltered by half a heartbeat, then recovered. "I think this interview is over." "Not yet," Wolfe said, "because I will tell you what you already know. Silence has its price. You, Miss Frome, wrote that note." Her eyes snapped up, a flicker of genuine alarm before she smoothed it. "You have no proof." "Not yet," Wolfe said, and his voice was quiet enough to chill the room. "But before this evening, I shall." When she left, I exhaled. You sure like lighting fires and watching people sweat. She sweated internally, Wolfe said. A more efficient form. Prepare, Archie. I anticipate movement before midnight. Either she or Lamson will act, and when they do, we will know which hand holds the match. When Lydia Frome's perfume finally drifted out the door, Wolfe leaned back and closed his eyes. That's his version of pacing. Internal, soundless, and twice as unnerving. I waited a respectful 30 seconds before speaking, because interrupting him during what he calls arrangement is like slapping a monk mid-prayer. You've got her rattled, I said. She flinched when you mentioned the note. You think she really wrote it? I think, Wolfe said, she believes she can manage consequences through tone. But she cannot manage Mr. Lamson, and she knows it. The relationship is asymmetrical. He's a scavenger, she a strategist. Their alliance is therefore unstable. Meaning one of them will chew the other first. Precisely. And when they do, the bones will tell us who held the meat. Before I could ask for translation into English, the phone rang. I picked it up. It was Mrs. Darnell, her voice tight as wire. Mr. Goodwin, she said. Something's happened. I received another note. It was slipped under my door just now. What does it say? Just one sentence. The widow pays next. That did it. I told her to stay put and promised I'd be there in 20 minutes. Wolfe's eyebrows lifted when I relayed it. Archie, he said, you will go. See that she is neither hysterical nor foolish. If she insists upon being one, persuade her to be the former. Got it. Want me to take Saul? Not yet. Observe first, report second, act last, and take a taxi, not the sedan. Speed may be useful. That's Wolfe's idea of urgency. Not quite a command, but close enough to make my pulse behave. Mrs. Darnell's building was a tidy midtown tower, with a doorman who looked like he could memorize every face in Manhattan and forget none. He knew me. Wolfe's reputation opens certain doors and slams others. He handed me an envelope that had been found in the lobby. No one saw who left it, he said. The elevator boy found it wedged in the frame. I took it upstairs. Mrs. Darnell met me at the door wearing a robe that managed to look both expensive and defensive. She'd poured herself a drink, which was at least practical. The note was typed this time on the same cream bond as before. The widow pays next. No signature, no smudges, just menace in 12-point font. I asked her if anything else was missing. She shook her head. I haven't touched a thing since I saw it. Any calls? Visitors? Doorbell rings? None. I looked around. No signs of forced entry. The window latch was intact. Whoever delivered it had access to the building or enough nerve to act like they did. Did you tell anyone you came to see Wolfe? I asked. Her eyes flicked sideways. Only Lydia. She called this morning, wanted to know why I'd been asking questions about Charles's last week. I told her I'd sought advice. I didn't give your names. Did she sound surprised? No. She sounded entertained. That was worth pocketing. All right, I said. You'll stay here tonight. Lock the door. If anyone calls or knocks, you don't answer. You call me. Clear. She nodded. The steadiness was back, though it was working hard to stay there. Mr. Goodwin, whoever's doing this, what do they want? I could have said money, but Wolfe had already decided that wasn't it. They want silence, I told her. Yours or someone else's. When I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe was exactly as I'd left him, except for an empty beer glass. Well, he asked. I handed him the note in a tissue folder. He examined it through his magnifier like it might confess. Machine typed, he said. No ribbon flaws. Standard spacing. Amateur precision. Could be Lamson's doing, I said. He'd enjoy watching her sweat. Perhaps. But Lamson is too vain to hide behind anonymity. Miss Frome, however, understands the economy of fear. She will spend small threats to buy large advantage, meaning she sent it to scare the widow quiet, or to provoke her into rash action. Either outcome serves. Wolfe leaned forward. Archie, you will call Saul Panzer. He will discreetly watch Miss Frome tonight. I wish to know who visits her, telephones her, or departs from her door in haste. Got it. Then call Mrs. Darnell's doorman. Obtain a list of visitors from noon until the note was found. Already on it, I said. He's a pro. He'll give us a rundown. Wolfe nodded once, eyes closing. The thief who took the letters will move again. They are leverage, and leverage must be used before it spoils. Someone will try to retrieve, sell, or destroy them. We shall be ready when they do. By the time I got Saul briefed and set him loose, it was near midnight. I was debating between coffee and bed when the phone rang again. Saul's voice came low and steady. She's had a visitor, he said. Male, mid-40s, left her apartment about 10 minutes ago. Guess who? Lamson. Bingo. He looked nervous. You want me to follow? Stick with him. Call if he heads anywhere public or interesting. I hung up and relayed it to Wolfe, who had the smug satisfaction of a man whose deduction had just been validated by geography. He is there to repair their breach, Wolfe said, or to demand compensation. Either way, one of them will attempt to secure the letters tonight, meaning someone's about to do something stupid. Most crimes are acts of impatience, Archie. Our task is to let the impatient reveal themselves. He poured another inch of beer, and I swear the foam reflected the faintest glint of pleasure. At 1:15, Saul called again. Lamson went to his office. Lights on, blinds closed. He's moving fast inside, packing something maybe. You want me to go up? No, Wolfe said when I relayed it. Stay outside. Observe. 10 minutes later, the next call came. Sharper. He's gone, Saul said. Out the back, briefcase in hand. He's taking a cab downtown. Follow, Wolfe instructed. Keep distance. Saul grunted acknowledgement and hung up. Wolfe leaned back and folded his hands across his stomach. We approach conclusion, Archie. The letters are changing hands tonight, and unless I misjudge... The phone rang again. This time it wasn't Saul. It was Inspector Kramer. His voice was gravel soaked in coffee. Goodwin, I hope your boss is awake. We've got a body in a downtown alley off Lexington. Name's Victor Lamson. Somebody decided his discretion wasn't worth the price anymore. Wolfe's eyes opened. Archie, he said softly, tell Mr. Kramer we are awake, and that we shall regrettably remain so. Kramer showed up at the brownstone at 2:30 in the morning, which tells you just how much he loves Nero Wolfe. If it had been anyone else, he'd have waited until dawn and brought a warrant. He came in without knocking twice, and Fritz, who can stare down a senator, didn't even try to stop him. That's the kind of authority Kramer carries when a corpse is fresh. He dropped his hat on the table, scowled at me, and jabbed a thumb toward the office. He up? Alive and vertical would be too much to ask, but yes, he's conscious, I said, and opened the door. Wolfe was in his chair, wrapped in his robe like a Roman senator at leisure. The look he gave Kramer was polite enough to make the insult deliberate. Inspector, to what do I owe this intrusion at an indecent hour? Kramer's mouth twisted. You know damn well what. You've been sniffing around a case involving a Victor Lamson. He's lying in an alley with his skull cracked. And when I check his call sheet, what do I find? One Mr. Archie Goodwin. I kept my face straight. That's correct. I called him earlier tonight. He didn't answer, but we were on speaking terms. Barely. Kramer swung to Wolfe. You two are in this up to your chins. Don't give me the innocent routine. What did you want from him? Information, Wolfe said. He was a professional procurer of secrets. I wished to inquire which one he had recently sold. Well, somebody decided to cancel his business license permanently. Kramer growled. You don't happen to know who, do you? If I did, I would have already informed you, Wolfe said mildly. His death complicates my inquiry. Kramer slammed his hat onto the desk. Don't play word games. He was seen leaving a woman's apartment, Lydia Frome, executive director of the Halcyon Fund, less than an hour before he was killed. You know her too? She has been here, Wolfe said. Professionally. Kramer snorted. Sure, everybody just happens to visit this place before winding up dead. He turned to me. You were tailing him? Saul Panzer was, I said. Lamson left Miss Frome's place carrying a briefcase. He went to his office, then ducked out the back and took a cab downtown. We kept pace until he disappeared into that alley. 10 minutes later, he was found dead. Briefcase still there? No, I said. Kramer's eyes narrowed. So we're missing whatever was in it. You got any idea what that might be? I could speculate, Wolfe said. But you dislike speculation unless it's yours. Kramer exhaled through his nose like a man deciding whether to break furniture. Fine. You stay out of this, Wolfe. That's an order. Inspector, Wolfe murmured. Orders are only effective when issued by superiors. You are not mine. Kramer glared. You're going to regret needling me when I've got a fresh homicide. If I find out you're withholding anything, you will, as always, bluster, Wolfe said. Now, may I suggest you preserve your energy for the pursuit of the actual murderer? You might begin with Miss Frome. Kramer hesitated, which meant Wolfe had scored. Why her? She had motives, access, and association. Lamson was her intermediary. His death benefits her silence. Kramer grunted. You really think she's capable of braining a man in an alley? Capability is a broader spectrum than muscle, Inspector. It includes intention and delegation. He muttered something about armchair philosophers and stomped out, slamming the door so hard that one of the orchids trembled. Wolfe sighed. Archie, he said, have Saul remain available. Lamson's death shifts the field. Whoever holds the letters now possesses peril rather than leverage. Unless they destroyed them. Unlikely. Destruction denies utility, and this circle thrives on utility. No, they will surface again, but not until the new custodian feels endangered. That could take weeks, I said. It will take hours. Miss Frome is impulsive beneath her varnish. He wasn't wrong. At 8:30 the next morning, while I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, the phone rang again. It was Saul. She's moving, he said. Frome's leaving her apartment. Looks like in a hurry. Carrying a slim attaché case. No escort. Where to? Cab driver says she told him West 39th, near the old Halcyon office. Want me to follow? Yes, Wolfe said when I covered the receiver. And instruct him to maintain distance. By the time Saul's next call came, Wolfe had consumed breakfast and half a chapter of Tacitus. She went into a small print shop, Saul reported. Name's Merritt and Associates. That hit both of us like a door slam. Julian Merritt, I said. Indeed, Wolfe said quietly. He's about to broker his absolution. She's still inside, Saul added. Been 15 minutes. Remain until she departs, Wolfe instructed, then hung up. I looked at him. You think she's handing off the letters? Or purchasing loyalty? Both are dangerous transactions. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. They both came out, Saul said. No case in sight. They didn't speak. She got back in the cab and left. He went the opposite way on foot. Wolfe nodded slowly. He now has them. The equilibrium shifts again. Prepare for another disturbance. He was right again, but this time it came faster than I expected. At 10, the doorbell rang. I opened it and there stood Elaine Mercer, the secretary with a face the color of chalk. I had to come, she said. Something's happened to Mr. Merritt. I ushered her in fast. Wolfe's eyes narrowed as she spoke. He called me 30 minutes ago, she said breathlessly. He said he had the materials and was going to burn them, but then the line went dead. When I tried to call back, no answer. Where is he? Wolfe asked. At the print shop. Please, you have to tell the police. Archie, Wolfe said, fetch Inspector Kramer. When I reached him, his temper was still simmering from the night before, but the word merit snapped him awake. He said he'd send men immediately and hung up without a goodbye. Elaine sat trembling in Wolfe's office, clutching a handkerchief. I told him to leave it alone, she said. Charles always said the past doesn't stay buried if you keep digging. Now they've both. Wolfe held up a hand. Compose yourself, Miss Mercer. Emotion clouds clarity. You say he intended to burn the materials. Did he specify where? No, only that he had them again. He sounded triumphant. I was about to say that triumph in this crowd had a short shelf life when the phone rang once more. Kramer's voice came rough and clipped. Goodwin, you and Wolfe can stop pretending you're spectators. Merritt's dead. Found in his print shop, locked inside. Fire started near his desk. Some kind of accelerant. Looks like he didn't finish burning whatever he started. I glanced at Wolfe. He'd already closed his eyes. Inspector, he said when I relayed it, you will discover fragments of burned paper in the debris. Preserve them. They are now the only witnesses left. Kramer growled something unintelligible and hung up. Wolfe sat motionless for a long minute, then said, Archie, this case has acquired haste. We must contain it before it consumes the rest. Meaning, I asked. Meaning Mrs. Darnell is next. I was halfway through calling Mrs. Darnell when she beat me to it. Her voice came thin and tight, like a violin string ready to snap. Mr. Goodwin, thank heaven you're there. There's someone watching my building. He's been outside for over an hour, just standing. I looked from my window. He's not even pretending to do anything. Describe him. Tall, grey coat, hat pulled low. He hasn't moved. I called the doorman. He went to check, but by the time he got down, the man was gone. Did he come back? Yes. 5 minutes later. That did it. Lock the door, I said. Don't open for anyone. I'll be there. When I hung up, Wolfe was already watching me. She's under surveillance, I said. He gave one short nod. It was inevitable. Whoever now holds the letters must assume she can identify their significance. If Merritt intended to destroy them, someone prevented it. I started for the hall. You're sending me to her? Yes. Take a cab. Do not attempt confrontation unless forced. You will remain near her until further notice. I left with a feeling that the brownstone silence was something I'd have to earn back later. The street outside Mrs. Darnell's building was too quiet for mid-morning. I spotted the man easily, grey overcoat, thin shoulders, face turned toward the entrance with a patience that didn't belong to pedestrians. He wasn't big, but he had the compact stillness of someone used to waiting for trouble, not avoiding it. I slipped into the lobby, caught the doorman's eye, and asked if he'd seen the watcher again. Keeps lighting cigarettes, never smokes them. Then he said something that straightened my spine. He's got the kind of walk that says police, or ex-police. That made the picture blurrier, not clearer. I went up to Mrs. Darnell's apartment. She let me in, pale but composed. The window shades were down, the perfume of fear faint in the room. You were right to call, I told her. If he's still out there, he's either guarding or hunting. Until I know which, you stay put. Guarding? You think someone's protecting me? I've learned not to assume charity, I said, but we'll find out. I called Wolfe. He listened while I described the man and the scene. That will be Saul, Wolfe said. Saul, you sent him? Yes. After Mr. Merritt's death, I concluded the widow's risk increased exponentially. You're not the only one with instructions, Archie. Saul has his own. I felt relief, though I didn't show it. You could have told me. I could have, Wolfe said, but you might have behaved differently. I prefer natural reactions in those I observe indirectly. Great. So I'm part of the experiment. Unwitting honesty is invaluable, Wolfe said, and hung up. Mrs. Darnell was watching me. Is it him, the man outside? He's friendly, sort of. That calmed her only slightly. She sat by the window, hands folded, staring at the drawn curtains. They've all been punished, she said softly. Charles, then Lamson, now Merritt. How many more? Until what? I asked. She looked at me, eyes sharp now. Until the letters stop existing. That's what this is about. They're dangerous because they contain names. The people who profited, who donated to get favors, who lied. Lydia Frome told me once that truth was a luxury the fund couldn't afford. That sounds like a confession with punctuation. Not hers, she said. Charles's. He wrote it in one of those letters. I remember the phrase. I think he knew this would happen. I leaned closer. You read them? Just that one. The rest was sealed, but he kept a small notebook, locked away separately. He said it was his ledger of penance. I didn't see it when the box was stolen, but I remember where he kept it, behind a false panel in the desk. If it's still there. I didn't need the end of that sentence. The desk was in her study, a mahogany piece that probably weighed as much as Wolfe. It took a few minutes of feeling along the inner rim before my finger caught a notch. A gentle press and a narrow panel slid free. Inside was a small black notebook, plain, no title. The paper was brittle. I flipped through enough to see names, dates, notations of payments and initials. One page was dated 2 days before Darnell's death. VL, final payment. HF secure. LF restless. VL was obvious. HM had to be Halcyon Fund. But LF, Lydia Frome. I whistled low. Your husband left breadcrumbs, I said. Mrs. Darnell's hand trembled. Should we show it to Mr. Wolfe? That's the only thing we will do. We'll take it. A soft knock interrupted me. 3 taps, measured. She froze. That's not Saul. He wouldn't knock. I motioned for her to stay back, moved to the door, and called, Who is it? A pause, then a woman's voice. Steady. Cold. It's Lydia Frome. I need to speak with Mrs. Darnell. I looked through the peephole. It was her, standing alone in the corridor, her expression set like glass. I opened the door halfway, keeping my hand in my pocket. You pick fine times for social calls. Her gaze swept over me. This isn't social. I'm here to end this. By confession or cleanup? Neither, she said. By retrieval. There are documents that never should have existed. You have them. Mrs. Darnell appeared behind me, voice sharp. You mean the ones you've been killing people over? Lydia didn't flinch. I didn't kill anyone. But others will if those papers don't disappear. You don't understand what's at stake. Then enlighten us, I said. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Charles wasn't blackmailed. He was protecting the fund's reputation, mine included. Those letters implicate donors who would destroy us all to keep their names clear. Lamson tried to sell them. Merritt thought he could barter them. I'm the only one trying to end it. By fire, I said. She met my eyes. Yes, because that's the only absolution left. I didn't have to glance at Mrs. Darnell to know what she was thinking. You're not taking them, she said. Lydia's lips thinned. Then you're choosing the same fate as the others. That was when the sound came. Faint from the hall below. Saul's signal, 2 sharp knocks on the rail. It meant trouble incoming. Lydia's eyes flicked to the door. She must have heard it too, because she moved faster than I'd pegged her capable of, straight for me, hand darting inside her coat. I grabbed her wrist before the revolver cleared leather. The gun clattered to the floor, sliding under the table. She gasped, fought once, then went still. Below, heavy steps thundered up the stairwell. Kramer's voice, barking orders. "Police! Stay where you are!" When they burst in, Lydia Frome didn't resist. She stood, calm again, watching as Kramer cuffed her. "Caught her trying to retrieve evidence," I told him. "We've got the notebook." Kramer looked at Wolfe's direction. He wasn't there, of course, but his expression said he knew whose hand had guided it all. "Your boss," he muttered, "should try sleeping sometime." As they led Lydia out, Mrs. Darnell sank into a chair. "Is it over?" she whispered. "Almost," I said. But when Wolfe says almost, that usually means one more performance before the curtain. And sure enough, when we got back to the brownstone with the notebook in hand, Wolfe was waiting, beer at his elbow, eyes closed, like a man who'd already seen the ending and was simply waiting for the rest of us to catch up. When Fritz let us in, Wolfe was sitting exactly where I'd pictured him, except for one addition. The faintest smile, the kind he saves for moments when human folly has met his expectations. The black notebook sat on the blotter before him, open but untouched. Kramer stood off to the side with his arms folded, wearing the look of a man trying not to admit he'd walked into someone else's trap. "You got here fast," I said. "I was already on my way," Kramer grunted. "We had Frome in the wagon before you left the widow's place. She's talking, or pretending to. Claims she broke in to destroy evidence, not kill anyone. She's slippery." Wolfe lifted his eyes. "And her statement?" "She says Lamson called her earlier that night, demanded another payment to keep the letters buried. She went to his place to reason with him. When she left, he was alive. She swears she never saw Merritt afterward, but we found her prints on a half-burned envelope in his office." "Which she will attribute to correspondence," Wolfe said. "Convenient, but plausible." Kramer's gaze went to the notebook. "This what everyone's dying over?" Wolfe inclined his head. "In essence, though the real danger lies not in its content, but in what it represents. The proof that every person connected to the Halcyon Fund played a role in perpetuating deceit." Kramer scowled. "You think Frome killed Lamson and Merritt both?" "I think," Wolfe said evenly, "that she intended the former but accomplished only the latter." That didn't sit well with Kramer. "You'll have to do better than riddles, Wolfe. 2 men are dead." "And 1 woman," Wolfe said quietly. Kramer's head jerked up. "What?" "Mrs. Darnell," Wolfe murmured. "By now she will be dead." The words hit the room like a dropped stone. I was already moving for the phone, but Wolfe's hand came up. "Wait, Archie. Call Saul first. Confirm." My stomach was tightening, but I did as told. Saul answered after 2 rings, his voice low and grim. "Yeah, I was about to call you. An ambulance just left her building. Gas leak in the kitchen, they're saying, but she never lit a stove." I hung up slowly. Kramer cursed under his breath. "You had a man watching her, and she did not take her own life," Wolfe said sharply. "You underestimate the efficiency of guilt. Mrs. Darnell knew too much, but she also knew too little to defend herself. Someone decided to silence her before she could speak." Kramer rubbed his temples. "Then who's left? Frome's in custody. The partner's Ash. The blackmailer's dead. You think we've got a ghost doing clean-up work?" "No ghost," Wolfe said. "A survivor. One who has remained nearly invisible until now." He looked at me. "Archie, the notebook." I handed it over. He opened to a page near the end and pointed with a blunt finger. "EM, told to hold package. To deliver if I fall." "Elaine Mercer," I said. "Of course," Wolfe said. "She had proximity to all of them. Charles, Merritt, Frome. She typed their correspondence, managed their schedules, heard their confidences. She would have known of the letters' existence long before the burglary. And when they were stolen, who better to orchestrate it than the one person everyone trusted?" Kramer's mouth twisted. "You're saying the secretary's behind all of it?" "I'm saying," Wolfe replied, that she is the one constant in every circle of deceit. Observe the pattern. Darnell dies. His secrets, unguarded. Lamson demands payment. Killed. Merritt threatens exposure. Burned. Mrs. Darnell becomes inconvenient. Disposed of. Each death removes a custodian of knowledge. The only beneficiary is the one who can sell that knowledge anew. Kramer frowned, thinking it through. You think she's selling the letters? She will, Wolfe said, but not to the fund, nor to any of its donors. She will sell them to a competitor, to the very institutions that would gain from Halcyon's disgrace. It's not vengeance, Inspector. It's commerce. I said, and now that she knows Frome's been caught, she'll move fast. Probably tonight. Wolfe nodded once. Indeed. Miss Mercer will not sleep while opportunity ripens. Archie, you will call her. Tell her Mrs. Darnell's death has changed everything and that you intend to deliver the notebook to the police in the morning. Offer to meet her here at 9. Make it sound careless. Kramer's jaw tightened. You're baiting her? Yes, Wolfe said simply. And she will come. Her vanity will not resist the chance to tidy the scene. When I made the call, she answered immediately. Her voice was crisp but strained. I told her what Wolfe had rehearsed. There was the faintest pause. Then she said, 9 o'clock, I'll be there. After I hung up, the house grew quiet. Even Fritz moved softly, like the walls were listening. Wolfe had closed his eyes again, but I could tell by the slow movement of his lips that he was tracing the pattern forward, piece by piece. At 9 sharp, the bell rang. I opened the door to find Elaine Mercer standing perfectly composed, her gloves buttoned, her face the color of pale linen. She carried a slim portfolio. Mr. Goodwin, she said, you said Mr. Wolfe wished to see me. She stepped into the office, graceful as ever, and looked from Wolfe to Kramer, who'd taken the far corner chair like a man waiting for lightning. Miss Mercer, Wolfe said, we are gratified by your promptness. You've come for the notebook, of course. She didn't deny it. You said it would go to the police. That would ruin more lives than it saves. Lives have already been ruined, Wolfe said. And taken. Her eyes flicked to Kramer, then back. You think I killed them? I think, Wolfe said, you began by safeguarding secrets for convenience, then discovered the profit in possession. You may not have lifted a weapon, but you arranged every act that followed. You sent the thief who took the letters from Mrs. Darnell's safe. You urged Lamson to sell his silence, then silenced him when he grew greedy. Merritt trusted you. You betrayed him. And Mrs. Darnell, she learned too late that her husband's conscience had kept her alive. Her composure cracked for a breath, just a tremor in the jaw. You can't prove that. Wolfe reached to his side and pressed a switch. From the adjoining room came Saul's voice, calm and clear through the open door. She can't prove she didn't either. We've got her prints on the same brand of notepaper as the threats. Her typewriter matches the one used for Lamson's blackmail drafts. And the doorman at Darnell's place just identified her as the woman who slipped in the night before the gas leak. Elaine froze. Her fingers tightened on the portfolio. For a second, I thought she'd try for a run, but the sight of Kramer rising was enough. The portfolio dropped, scattering envelopes. Kramer moved in. She didn't fight. The sound of the cuffs closing was soft but final. Wolfe opened his eyes fully. Inspector, you may now claim your murderer. Kramer gave me a look that said he wasn't sure whether to thank or throttle Wolfe. Every time, he muttered. You sit there, eat, think, and I get the mess. Indeed, Wolfe said. That is our natural division of labor. When they were gone, the room settled again. Wolfe reached for his beer, raised it slightly toward me. Archie, he said, do you know why I took this case? Because you can't resist tidy crimes that start untidy. He smiled faintly. Because corruption, masquerading as benevolence, is the most offensive of all. One must prune it as one does diseased roots. And now, dinner. He rang for Fritz. The orchids overhead breathed their quiet perfume, and the house, at last, was silent again. I looked at the empty chair across from me and thought of Mrs. Darnell, of the widow who tipped Archie, and the price of silence that kept climbing until nobody could afford to pay it. Dinner that night was braised duck with orange and something Fritz called a moral reduction. I didn't ask what that meant. He'd probably gotten the phrase from Wolfe. The air in the brownstone had finally started to ease back toward its usual rhythm, though it was the kind of calm that comes after a storm, when you know the windows are still rattling from what passed through. Wolfe ate with slow satisfaction, as if clearing his plate were an act of final punctuation. I kept my notebook on the corner of the table, though I hadn't written a word since Kramer's men had led Elaine Mercer away. There was still something about it that didn't sit right. The neatness of it. Wolfe likes neatness, but sometimes it hides the grit that keeps the world spinning. When he finished, he dabbed his mouth and leaned back. "You're restless," he said. "I'm suspicious," I corrected. "Elaine Mercer fits, sure, but I've seen better fits split at the seams. There's something off about how it all came together. She played the role too well. I've never seen guilt so clean." He eyed me. "Guilt is not always expressed in perspiration and stammers. Some criminals are tidy even in ruin." "Maybe, but you don't believe she acted alone." He sighed. "No." That one word told me we weren't done. He continued. "Miss Mercer was cunning enough to manipulate others, but not resourceful enough to arrange the precision of those deaths. The gas leak in particular, it required mechanical competence. That was not her craft. So she had help. An accomplice, yes, and one who has yet to reveal himself. I felt the familiar itch that comes when Wolfe admits the game isn't quite over. Who's left? Think, Archie. Who benefited from every removal? From Darnell's death, from Lamson's silence, from Merritt's ashes, from Mrs. Darnell's erasure, and even from Miss Mercer's arrest. Frome's finished. The fund's reputation is wrecked. There's no money left in it, so that leaves... I stopped. Wolfe's eyes opened fully. "Theo," I said. He nodded. "Precisely." I frowned. But he hated everyone involved. He said it himself. He wanted the whole structure to fall. "Hatred is often the most efficient disguise for ambition," Wolfe said. "His father's fortune was tangled in the fund. Its destruction releases his inheritance from moral scrutiny. Miss Mercer was his tool, not his equal." I leaned back. "You think he put her up to it?" "I'm certain of it. She was susceptible. Admiration, perhaps even affection. He provided the plan, she executed it, and now she will absorb the blame while he inherits untainted wealth." I whistled low. "That's elegant. Cold, but elegant." "It will not remain so," Wolfe said. "Kramer believes the case concluded. He will not pursue Theo without evidence, and I will not permit such cunning to prosper. You've got a plan." "Of course. He will come to us, though he does not yet know it." "How?" "Guilt and pride are twins, Archie. He will wish to see how well he performed." It took less than a day. The next afternoon the bell rang, and Fritz ushered Theo Darnell into the office with the brittle politeness of a man serving arsenic on fine china. Theo looked rested, too rested for a man whose stepmother had just died, and whose family legacy had gone up in smoke. He smiled at me, then at Wolfe. "I suppose congratulations are in order," he said. "You've untangled the mystery. Elaine Mercer, the unassuming secretary with a secret ledger, she fooled us all." Wolfe's eyes didn't move. "You are correct, Mr. Darnell. She fooled you most of all." Theo cocked his head. "Meaning?" "Meaning you overestimated her restraint," Wolfe said. "You believed she would keep her silence once you had reaped the benefits, but she did not. She spoke." That made him blink. "Spoke? To whom?" "Me," Wolfe said. Theo's smile flickered. "You're bluffing." "I rarely bluff. Miss Mercer left a statement. In it, she described your arrangement in full. The payments, the theft, the deaths. She called you her conscience and her ruin. I confess, I find the description apt." He laughed too sharply. "You expect me to believe that? You've no proof." Wolfe tilted his head. "Proof is a flexible term. Inspector Kramer, however, has a fondness for direct testimony. He will decide the value of her statement when you confirm it." Theo stood motionless for several seconds, then sat abruptly. "You think you've won," he said, "but you don't understand. They all deserved it. My father built his empire on fraud. Those people, Frome, Merritt, they profited off his guilt. Elaine and I just accelerated justice. By killing them," I said. He looked at me, eyes cold. "You call it killing. I call it erasure, a moral correction." Spoken like a man who's never faced a morgue. Theo ignored me. He turned to Wolfe. "If Elaine gave you that statement, you know I didn't touch her. She believed in what we were doing. You won't hang me on her words alone." "No," Wolfe said softly. "I will not hang you at all. I will simply give Kramer what he needs to do so." He reached for the intercom. Before he pressed the button, Theo's hand darted into his coat pocket. For a second, I thought he'd come armed, but instead he pulled out a small folded letter. He threw it onto the desk. "Here," he said. "That's her confession. She wrote it before the police took her. She sent it to me. If you read it, you'll see who gave the orders." Wolfe didn't move. I stepped forward, unfolded the letter, and read it silently. It was a suicide note, carefully worded. Elaine Mercer confessed to every death, taking full blame, freeing Theo of any connection. It was a last, precise move, the perfect alibi from beyond the grave. "She's dead," Theo said. His voice was calm, almost tender. "Killed herself in the cell last night. So you see, Mr. Wolfe, there's nothing left for Kramer. The evidence dies with her." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Wolfe's eyes opened, and there was a strange light in them. Not surprise, not victory, something colder. "You are mistaken," he said. "Her death only confirms my conclusion. You wrote this letter." Theo's jaw clenched. "Prove it." "Miss Mercer's typewriter is in police custody," Wolfe said. "This letter was written on a newer model, one purchased last week from a store 3 blocks from your apartment. Saul Panza verified the sale this morning. The receipt bears your signature." The color drained from Theo's face. "You—" Wolfe's voice deepened. "No, Mr. Darnell, you thought you could erase her, as you erased the others, by dressing her guilt in your own prose. You should have remembered that words, like crimes, bear the mark of their author." Kramer entered then, summoned by Wolfe's signal. Theo didn't resist. As they led him out, he turned once, eyes hard but not angry. "You think you understand justice, Wolfe. You don't. You just cage it and call it order." When the door closed, Wolfe leaned back, breathing out through his nose. "He is wrong," he said softly. "Justice is not order, it is appetite. The difference is that I know when to stop feeding it." He reached for his beer. "Fritz," he called. "The duck was excellent. Please prepare another for tomorrow." I sat back, watching him, and couldn't help it. I laughed. "You really think you've restored order?" Wolfe closed his eyes. "No, Archie. I have restored quiet. That will do." And for the first time in days, the brownstone settled into the kind of silence that only Nero Wolfe. The brownstone had resumed its old pulse, the kind you feel more than hear. The case was over, the papers were folded, and Kramer had gone off to wrestle with the DA about how to file a murder that had confessed itself twice. Fritz was back to humming in the kitchen. The orchids upstairs were getting their regular dose of humidity and flattery, and Wolfe had settled once more into the rhythm of consumption and contemplation. If not for the faint scorch of what had passed through, you could almost have believed it had never happened. Almost. I was at my desk that evening, typing up the record for posterity, or at least for the next time Wolfe decided to remind Kramer that intellect trumps manpower, when he said, without opening his eyes, "Archie, what do you find most regrettable in this affair?" I didn't have to think. That the widow who started it all ended up buried deeper than her husband. She knocked on our door asking for help, and she got history instead. "That is sentimental," he said. "Maybe," I said. "But she didn't deserve to be erased by the same system her husband built. None of them did, even if they earned it." "Deserve," Wolfe murmured, "is a word without architecture. It supports nothing. Mrs. Darnell's tragedy was that she mistook silence for protection. Those who traffic in secrets eventually pay in kind." I stopped typing. "You mean she hired us because she knew it would end this way?" He opened his eyes then, heavy-lidded, tired but clear. "No, Archie. She hired us because she thought knowledge could be contained. She was wrong. The moment she entered this house, the truth became inevitable." I leaned back. "That's one way of saying you set the avalanche in motion." He allowed himself a small grunt. "Avalanches, like appetites, obey gravity. I merely observed the slope." That was Wolfe for confession. I let it pass. After a while, he said, "You're dissatisfied." "I'm practical," I said. "We cleared the names, caught the guilty, and served justice, more or less. But it still feels like we cleaned up a room no one's going to live in again." "That," Wolfe said, "is the fate of those who build their lives upon deceit. It leaves fine architecture and no inhabitants." He reached for his beer, turning the glass slowly between his fingers. "It also leaves a reminder, if one chooses to see it. Money, reputation, charity, they are fragile constructions. Integrity is the only durable wall." "Try putting that on a fundraising brochure," I said. That got the ghost of a smile. The world would not pay for such honesty. We sat in quiet then, the kind that fills the brownstone after a case. The kind that isn't quite peace, but close enough for men who make their living from other people's noise. Outside, the city hummed along, indifferent as always. I finished the report, closed the file, and set it on the shelf with the others. Another volume in Wolfe's private library of human misbehavior. He broke the silence again. "Archie, if Mrs. Darnell had not come here, do you think these deaths would have occurred?" I looked at him. "Maybe not so fast, but the kind of people we just dealt with, they were already digging their graves. We just pointed out the measurements." He nodded once, slowly, as if weighing the words. "That is an acceptable summary." Fritz entered with the coffee. He poured for Wolfe first, then for me. The aroma filled the room, smooth and steady, like the punctuation on a long sentence. Wolfe sipped and sighed contentedly. "Archie," he said after a moment, "in all this, I was reminded of something Marcus Aurelius wrote. A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." "Yeah," I said, "but Marcus never met Theo Darnell." He almost smiled. "True, yet the principle holds. Ambition unmoored from conscience breeds the same rot as deceit. It consumes, then devours itself." I raised my cup. "To appetite with limits, then." He inclined his head. "And to quiet digestion." The conversation ended there, as it always does, with Wolfe satisfied by philosophy and me by caffeine. I watched him settle deeper into his chair, the faint hum of the refrigerator and the rustle of pages marking the brownstone's heartbeat. Outside, a siren drifted somewhere uptown, faint and harmless. Inside, there was only the low sigh of a man who had once again rearranged chaos into symmetry. The widow who tipped Archie had taken her secrets to the grave. The guilty had confessed without speaking, and the brownstone, impervious, indulgent, and intact, had resumed its sacred order. I turned off the light over my desk and said, "Good night, sir." Wolfe didn't look up. "Good night, Archie." That was the end of it. Dinner was done, the city was sleeping, and somewhere in the dark, truth was curling back into silence, just the way he liked it. Could call peace.